Am I on my own or do you? Okay, speech evaluation is a little bit different exercise and different creature, international speech contest. In the speech evaluation contest, you're trying to help someone get better. Now, in the international contest, you're trying to motivate, you're doing a lot of things, but you're sort of offering your message and your experience to the audience. In the speech evaluation contest, it is really just like what you want to have in a club evaluation. Namely, you want to tell people what they did well and what you think they might want to consider for improvement, and then close with something encouraging, some comment that's encouraging to send them off to do the speech. You've got, now there are a lot of parallels between the two though. For instance, you talked about a dive ending for a speech. You've got 2 to 3 minutes for a speech evaluation, being it's a contest environment. What always worked best for me is that when the green light went on at 2 minutes, if I had not made the turn into the evaluation, I jumped into it at that point. What I mean by that is that typically I would try to allocate 2 minutes to tell the people what I thought about the speech and what they did well, what I enjoyed, what I liked, the things that really made a difference to me. And then when the green light went on, I'd say something to the effect of, as you're in your club evaluations, you're going to have the chance to give this speech again. If you do it, I'd like to consider these options. And then tell them 2 or 3 things. I typically would try to gun for one thing structural and one thing, for lack of a better term, performance. And then run from there. And by performance, by structural, I mean everything from vocal variety to the structure of the speech, to the way the message came across, to ordering, whatever worked. By performance, I mean everything else, the way they moved about the stage, the way they used props. Did they need to use props? Addressing that aspect of it. You can't do much more than that, because again, you've got 2 to 3 minutes. As they were saying in the international speech contest, you got 5 to 7 minutes, you got time for one idea. In the evaluation contest, you don't have time to go into a great in-depth take on things. Now, you may have heard it said that that too often we get in club evaluations, we get whitewashes and we get blackballs. Whitewash. You're the best speaker I've ever heard. I cannot imagine a thing to improve your speech. Oh my Lord, we should have written it in stone and put it on a building, it's so good. And then there's the person that says, you know, this hurts me more than it hurts you. But for your own good, I think it's important to tell you every little thing about your speech I didn't like. And then they unroll a scroll of cold-style computer paper that goes about 15 feet and says, okay, I've got 150 points here, I better get going. And that's all they do, they just whack the person. Nobody is that good or that bad. Even, for instance, the I Have a Dream speech. Martin Luther King was losing his audience that day. He was losing his audience. Mahalia Jackson is sitting in the crowd behind him, and she says, Martin, tell him about the dream. Now, he'd used that in a previous speech, and suddenly it clicked. And the next thing here is, I have a dream, and history is written. He was getting ready to give a speech that would have looked really good on C-SPAN, and that's it. But Mahalia Jackson prompts him from the back.
Wow.
Things change immediately. So, in the evaluation contest, you say, how is it, you know, when you're talking about the good things, you want to mention the things they did. They do vocal variety, they do the basic Toastmaster things well, or the other things they did well. And you might say, well, gosh, Sam, how do I keep track of all those things? You've only got 5 minutes to prepare, and then you're going to get up and speak for 2 to 3 minutes, and they're going to take away your notes. How do you prepare for this? Well, the way I do it is I made up my own evaluation sheet. Not against the rules. The rules don't say that you have to write on anything in particular. Some people like notebooks, some people like notepads. I made myself a sheet that listed all the basic qualities, all the stuff you see in the Toastmaster manual. And if they hit them, I checked them off. So when it came time to evaluate, I could just say, vocal variety, great. Use of language, great. Movement, could have been better. But it's all right there. I don't have to stop and try to think about it. And then I would list 3 things that they did I really liked, and 3 things they did that I sort of took issue with. And then that's your thing. Now, having said that as a run-up, what questions do we have? Now, there are people who want to do speech evaluation. I know there are questions back there. Yes, Van. Yes, sir. Yes, Anton.
In the evaluation contest, how important is it to not over-rehearse in that time when you're sitting there with your thoughts in the sequester room before you go out on stage? Where your evaluation is either 50% of it, 50% of the notes. And I've seen it when I repeat it, where people will nearly do the entire evaluation over and over again. How much of that is either help or detriment in your opinion?
Well, since I can barely keep a thought in my mind for more than 25 seconds, I have no real experience with what you're talking about. I've never had anything over practice for an evaluation contest. I think, again, it comes down to what works for you. It's like in all these contests, it's what works for you. It's what works for you. Doesn't matter how you do for you. Someone talk about dialogue. It's what works for you and get your message across. If you're a person that's got, because you're nervous, you've got to hit this thing time and time again, then sit back there in the green room and keep reviewing it. If you're someone you think you have a pretty good idea of what you want to say, then just sort of keep that in mind. A point that Clarence could have spoken to much better than I, that should be remembered, is that it is not inappropriate to add humor or levity or lightness to your evaluation. It is not necessary to go out there and act like Professor Kingsfield in The Paper Chase and sort of go out there and go, young man, you did well on these points and you could have improved on these. There's no need for that. If there's something, but it's got to be something inherent in the situation. It's got to be something in the material that works. Because remember, at that point, you're on the high wire. And if you try to trot out something that's funny, you think it's funny, and it's not, the next sound you hear will be the fire company coming to put out the fire on the back of your jacket because you're burning up because your attempted humor has fallen flat. And then that's what the judges will be pulled away to. Humor, particularly self-deprecating humor, always works well, regardless of your situation. But it needs to be something that feels right. So don't go up there thinking that I've got to be funny. But if you're bopping along in that 2 to 3 minutes and something just hits you, let it fly. I mean, what's the worst thing that happens? The worst thing that happens is that you just keep on going and it doesn't hit as well as you'd like it to. And this actually comes to something that also applies to international speech contests, and that is when you get to humor, always rely on humor. Don't try to tell jokes. Now, the distinction is that a joke is a pretty clearly prefabbed setup where you're gunning for a punchline. And the thing is, and you don't see this, but the minute you try to tell a joke, there's a big red neon sign that starts flashing in back of you that says, "Speaker trying to tell a joke. Do you think it's funny?" Speaker trying to tell a joke. Do you think it's funny? And they know it's coming, and if it's funny, they'll laugh, but if it's not funny, they're going to know it's not funny. And once again, the fire company is coming to try to put out the fire you've created. Humor, on the other hand, tries to draw the elements of the situation and put them together in a way that can draw a laugh, draw a chuckle. The significance of humor in all these speeches is that it breaks up the mood, breaks up the tempo. Humor per se, not critical, but as a tool, just like your pacing, just like pausing, that breaks up the tempo and draws people in, can work very much in your favor. Yes, sir.
Just a comment on evaluation. I haven't been a district champ in evaluation, but I've been on the evaluation as a judge 1,000 times. And I can tell you the thing that I always look for in evaluators. Clarence Featherson is not here. He's one of our speakers. So I'm a little concerned about him. But I want to mention that Clarence is one of the best speakers that you'll ever see. and he has
And he'll
a
tell you
lot-
that too.
He has a lot of vocal variety, and he's all over the stage, and his hands are going every which way. And the evaluators almost always will say, great vocal variety, great use of the stage, great eye contact. But if the evaluator says, I really like the way that you used metaphor in your speech, as a judge, I look at that. If you're an evaluator, look for something that is unique. That's not going to be the same thing that every other evaluator is going to say. And if that unique thing also has gravitas, if it has weight, if it has a relationship to what the person was doing, that will set you apart from all of the other evaluators. If you're looking to win, look to be unique. And many, many times I've sat there as an evaluator, and when I've seen that spark of creativity or difference or uniqueness, that's what makes me score a person higher. So just keep that in mind.
I just want to add something. I hate impromptu, so evaluations or tabletop, it just terrifies me. But I can do.
And you were a pilot.
No. I control aircraft. It's kind of scary too. So I do much better with a speech that I know by heart. So when I was asked to do the evaluation contest, I actually got second in the district contest in 2014. But what I found really worked for me is when they say you can't prepare for it. At the same time, you can to an extent. So I would think of everything someone could do something wrong, and I'd write it down and how I would say it. So every time someone didn't use the stage, I'd say, try to use the stage like a storybook. You start over here, and then you turn the page slowly, and then you get to this side. But I had the way I was going to say it depending on what I thought that they needed to work on. So you can kind of get your ideas. If you think they talk too fast, know what you're going to say and how you're going to present it. They talk too fast. They talk too slow. Same thing. So you kind of can't prepare, and you can use those and memorize them. And the other thing that I did that worked really well is I went online and I YouTubed a lot of the clubs videotape all their evaluation speeches. And so I would, as soon as they were done with their speech, I'd pause it, and then I'd give my evaluation, and then I'd listen to everyone else's evaluation and see if I had the same thing, if I did it the same way they did, and where I thought I might have ranked. So those were kind of the things that helped me a little bit with it too.
Do we have any other questions about evaluation and how to become a better evaluator? Yes, ma'am.
Just one other comment. One of the biggest problems, or one of the most common problems that contestants do in speech evaluation contests is forgetting to include a conclusion, which is worth about 15%, I think.
Yes, ma'am.
And so you need to think of it as a mini speech with a beginning, middle, and an end. So don't forget that conclusion, or there's no way you can win without having that conclusion at the end.
And if you're unsure, you might start that part by saying, and in conclusion. So there's no question about it. There's leave no doubt about it. But she's exactly right. The conclusion is 15% of your score, and it is a sad thing to see someone that gives a really good evaluation and then steps off the stage, and you think to yourself, and the conclusion, that must be after lunch. It will come back. It is, but however you do this stuff, remember the key is always do things as what's natural to you. And it doesn't matter whether you're in an international speech contest or evaluation or table topics or anything, that you need to give the production of the presentation that is your presentation. Now, when Clarence Featherstone jumps around the stage, and he does jump around the stage when he does this, that's Clarence. And that works perfectly well for him. I couldn't do it, if only because of legal weight restrictions on stages. The possibility of a collapse imminent, so I don't do it. But, find your style. Now, participation in table topics is the same reason you should be participating in the international. Very simply, these contests are the fastest way to get better. The fastest way to get better. You might not have in your wildest dreams the idea of becoming the world champion of public speaking. Probably a good idea because actually achieving that are like up there in Powerball land for coming through at the end. But it is the fastest way to get better because you are so focused on the task, you're so focused on what you're doing. And, you know, I've heard it said that doing a contest, particularly if you go through the semifinals like these folks have, that you're fast tracking yourself like a year beyond the normal Toastmaster experience. So there are a lot of reasons we dream up not to compete and not to compete in different contests, but it's the fastest way to get better. And isn't that a more compelling action to follow than saying that I'm a little scared and a little bit worried I'm going to win? The fastest way to get better. I think it's worth your consideration.
And on that note, big round of applause.